It's 2013. I'm in New York City, in a room with 75 other people, all gathered for a personal transformation program. And we are doing an exercise called Free Our Inner Animal. Don't worry, it was all consensual. So we're paired up. The idea is we are paired up with each other, and our partners are supposed to provoke us enough so that we can have a cathartic experience and release stuck energy. And it's going really well. At a moment, I realize there's emotions in the room. I see around myself, and I see people crying. I see people sitting in a corner, completely disheveled. I see people shouting. I almost see people flying across the room. I was having a very different experience, though. More my partner tried to provoke me, the more I would go numb, the more I would get shut down. So what the facilitator did was they added more people to work with me. At one point, I had 5 people surrounding me, trying to get some kind of emotions out of me. I am 35 at this time. I am a solid, stoic rock of a man. I am numb, and I'm kind of proud of it. But before I go further, I want to talk about the story of how I got to this point in time. It's 1984. I'm 7-year-old, growing up in a small town in India. We have my cousins visiting us for summer vacations. We've just spent 2 months amazing fun in my hometown in the foothills of the Himalayas, and today is the day when they leave to go back home. I'm upset. I'm completely devastated that they're leaving. I'm crying, and my mother sees me crying and upset, and she comes to me. And in the most loving, as a mother is protective of her child, she comes to me and says, "Son, I'm really worried about you. How are you going to live your life if you're this sensitive?" In that moment, I took those words to my heart. I decided that feeling that much was not okay. I said to myself, I will never allow myself to feel that way ever again. A few years later, it's 1991, I'm woken up with the news that my grandmother has just passed away. I'm sad. I'm shocked. Also because we had just cremated my grandfather's body the day before. I entered into this room and I see my father on the floor, surrounded by my extended family, and he's crying and he's inconsolable. He's completely out of control. He's just lost both of his parents in a span of 48 hours. I look at him with all these emotions coming out, and I'm shocked and I'm scared. He was my bedrock. He was my emotional rock. The way I remembered my father was that he could handle any intense emotions without any issues. In that moment, subconsciously, I decided that I had to be the brave one now. That I had to be the responsible one. In that moment, I also saw my father's vulnerability as a weakness. By this time, I had already made up my mind that men are not supposed to be that emotional. So from then on, anytime I went through any kind of intense emotions, I went through any kind of heartbreak, I would reinforce this idea that I will never allow myself to feel this way ever again. That feeling that much was not okay for me as a man. It's 2002 now. I'm 25 and I get a phone call. It's my cousin at the other end, and he tells me that my father's passed away. He tells me that he was in a motorbike accident 3 days ago, and he had been in the hospital for 3 days, and nobody called me because they felt that it wasn't a critical situation and that I shouldn't be alarmed. I was angry. I was really angry that nobody had informed me that this had happened. I was really angry at the system that failed my father. I was angry and felt powerless that I couldn't do anything. The time had passed. But my rational mind was busy trying to figure out the logistics to get to India. I was living in Edinburgh by this time. Next day, I'm in India. I'm in front of my father's body. He's lying on a slab of ice. I look at his face and I see that he's gone. And I couldn't show any emotions. I look at him and I want to be inconsolable. I want to lash out, but I'm also realizing that I am now the head of the family. That I can't be seen as a man going out of control. That I have to take care of things. So after a while, I come back to Scotland and buried myself in my career and shutting my emotions more and more down over the next decade. It also cost me my relationship, my first marriage. So back in 2013, in this room in New York City, where I am surrounded by 5 people all trying to get some kind of emotion out of me. By this time, I'm living in this narrow bandwidth of emotions where I wouldn't allow myself to feel sad or any kind of pain. And at the same time, I wouldn't allow myself to feel any happiness or joy. And in one moment, something broke open. Last 30 years of suppressed emotions just all came out in one go. And I grabbed my facilitator by her shoulders. I pinned her against the wall, and I literally shouted with all my might in her face. And the words that could come out of my mouth were, "I don't know who I am." And I said those words, and I fell on the ground, curled up in fetal position, and just cried. For next 2 years, I went on a journey to discover who I had become. I went on a journey to investigate my emotions, my vulnerability, my sensitivity, my feelings. I surrounded myself with people and with teachers, with women who could teach me how to keep an open heart, and who could point out when I would close my heart. Women who were not afraid to point out when I was trying to hide my feelings. I surrounded myself with men who had done the work to understand their self-worth. Men who were not afraid to show emotions. Men for whom vulnerability was not a weakness but strength. And that completely transformed my life. I started to see my relationships changing as I was able to incorporate vulnerability, incorporate my sensitivity. I had some of the best connections I had ever had in my life. Not just romantically, not just intimacy-wise, but with my family, with my colleagues, with my coworkers, with my friends, everywhere. Everything started to transform. And I took connection and relationship as a practice, and I made that my life goal. Since then, I've worked with hundreds of men. And I see this across the board, that our culture has conditioned men to see our vulnerability as weakness, to see our sensitivity as something wrong. Last year, I did a men's connection workshop. I facilitated it at the Ministry of Justice. It was a room full of men. And I asked them one simple question. I asked them, how are you feeling? And you know what I got back? Every single man responded with just 2 words. I am good and I'm fine. So I asked them, since when, as us men, have only 2 words to describe our feelings? One of the men got up and said, oh, when I share my feelings, it feels like I'm burdening some people. I'm burdening others by sharing my feelings. Someone else got up and said, when I share my feelings, I feel like someone will take advantage of me. And that's my experience across the board working with men, that we carry with us this invisible belief, invisible burden that we don't want to let go of. So in conclusion, I want to leave you with this. As men, I think we grow up thinking that our vulnerability is weakness, that our sensitivity is somehow wrong, that our feelings will burden other people. We are walking around, walking around, sacrificing ourselves for our families, for our friends, for our partners. And at the same time, deep down, we're really angry. And that anger leaks out anyway. We are emotionally unavailable to the world. I believe that we need to create a world where young boys are told that their sensitivity is to be cherished, something to be celebrated. A world where vulnerability is not seen as weakness, but as strength. A world where asking for help is not just okay, but it is the healthy thing to do. A world where men can share our feelings, our emotions, our vulnerability, our burden with other men without any problem. I believe that if we heal this part of our collective consciousness, we will get to heal our ancestors, the wounds of our ancestors, and also the generations to come. I think that's how we heal our entire lineage. That'll be a world that'll have love and more kindness to ourselves, towards other people, towards all living being, and even our planet. So I want to invite you, dare to be sensitive. Thank you.